Okay, today we're going to start the Cybernetics series where I go through every chapter. Today we're going to start with the preface. Not going to be that long a video, but I think it's necessary to explain the overall idea of this book before we dive into it because, it'll help with the context. So to start, the book is based on the discovery of this plastic surgeon, Dr. Maxwell Maltz. And basically, he realized that the only alterations that he was really making wasn't just the faces of his patients. It was their self-face, their self-image, how they viewed themselves in relationship to others. And this really goes to determine everything about our lives. The self-image we have, the self-image we hold about ourselves determines the parameters of our lives, determines the way we approach situations, the way we deal with things, the way we walk into certain scenarios with confidence versus no confidence, with certain ideas about ourselves that allows us to succeed or not succeed. And we're prone to certain actions, we're prone to certain thoughts purely based off this self-reputation, this self-image or standing or just way we view ourselves. So I need you to understand that everything that you have ever said about yourself, everything that you've ever done, everything people have said about you or people have done to you has shaped this image. And it could be for good or bad. You could be vastly successful, or you could probably be not exactly what you want to be. And for the vast majority of people, probably 99.99% of people, they want to change things about themselves. So how do you change things about yourself? Well, it doesn't start with your actions. It starts with your thoughts. Because let's face it, you could be good for a day, you could be good for a week, you could be good for a year. But if you're that same person and you have not changed the deeper, darker layers of yourself, then that root issue is still there, and it's going to manifest in different ways. And until we start getting to the self-image, until we start changing the way we perceive ourselves and the way that we view ourselves, we can't change the results. We can't change the actions that are going to come forth from this self-image, from this self-reputation. And now that we know this, we can start tackling the deeper and darker issues that are in this book. The ways that we can change our self-image, the ways that we can change the way we talk to ourselves, the way that we can view failure, the way that we can view success, the way that we can get ourselves to success. It all derives first from the self-image. So with that said, before we get into anything in the book, if you're not feeling great about yourself right now, I'll leave it with this one exercise. Get out a sheet of paper, write down 10 things that you're gracious for, write down 10 things that you appreciate, and immediately you'll feel a little bit better. And if it doesn't improve your mood, do this day after day after day after day until it does. That said, I love you guys so much. Thank you guys so much. Stay tuned for the rest of these videos. Peace out. Okay, so today we have the first chapter of Cybernetics. I'm going to go through all the main points. I'm going to do it live, so hopefully I catch them. But overall, I think this is going to be a more interesting, more involved analysis of a book that I've talked about a lot previously. But I feel like glossing over this book doesn't quite get into everything that it's meant to talk about. I think this book has really a lot to say, and I feel like I've sold it short. I feel like I've talked about it so much, hyped it up so much, but I really haven't quite gone into detail. So here is the start of the series. We did a preface video already. We've done extensive videos already, but now we get into the substance. So with that said, Chapter 1, the self-image, your key to a better life. Now he starts off by talking about the idea of the self, what it means. Here's a pretty good definition by T.F. James, a writer in the Cosmopolitan magazine. Understanding the psychology of the self can mean the difference between success and failure, love and hate, bitterness and happiness. The discovery of the real self can rescue a crumbling marriage, recreate a faltering career, transform the victims of personality failure. On another plane, discovering your real self means the difference between freedom and the compulsions of conformity. The difference between freedom and the compulsions of conformity. I really love that quote. And what he's saying here is super, super important. So what he's saying here is it's not so much as important the things that you do or the things that you can do, but the way you view yourself in regards to that. Because Dr. Maxwell Maltz continues by saying that the self-image determines who you are in every scenario. Now, the things that have happened to you have happened to you. You can't change them. But what you can change is your outlook. What you can change is how you view these scenarios, how you internalize them, how they hold weight or don't hold weight towards you. So, I feel like the vast majority of people in this world have a negative self-image, have a negative view of themselves. And because of this, in every single scenario, they're not responding as good as they possibly could. But what if you just believed in yourself a little more? What if you just believe that, you know what, I might not have the answer right now, but if I put my head down, I will surely find it. What difference would that make in your life? What difference would that make in every single decision? You were a little bit better. And I promise you, if you're a little bit better in a few key categories, that makes all the difference. You know, there's a famous story from Atomic Habits where there's this Olympic team, and they're not very well known for being that good, but basically they categorize all these different facets of the race, and essentially they improved 1% in each category, and this aggregation of 1% in each category made them the world champion. And that's really what we need to understand here, because it's not just the peak level of performance, it's what you do on a daily basis, it's how you respond. You know what, imagine you're in an argument and you respond a little bit more nicely. Imagine you're talking to someone that you don't like and you're a little bit more courteous to them. You know, now add this up for the rest of your life and see the difference that this is going to make. And even just this little example is so profound, but let's get into the rest of the book. So essentially what he's talking about is the self-image becomes a golden key to living a better life because of two important discoveries. All your actions, feelings, behavior, even your abilities are always consistent with the self-image. Like I said, how you respond to the moment is consistent with the self-image. And then, where's the second point? The self-image can be changed. Numerous case histories have shown that this one is never too young nor too old to change his self-image and thereby start a new life. That one is never too old nor too young, okay? I can't read apparently, but essentially, we have these two important ideas. One, that everything that you do is determined by how you view yourself. You know, think about if you walk into a room and you're confident. First, think about if you walk into a room and you don't think that you have a right to be there. What person is going to reflect to the world a better persona? What person to the world is going to demand more respect? You know, it's not even so much communication or so much how you say things. It's the body language as well. If you say something and you're all deflated and you're like, yeah, well, or if you're like, yeah, we need to do this. Which one sounded better? And I didn't even really sell it that well. I'm not really good at deflating my body language. I'm a fairly big person. So I think, you know, this is something that's really important to consider, because the moment we start changing how we view ourselves and how we project ourselves into the world is the moment we start seeing a different response. And now that we understand this, then we can start to make a change, because whatever it is that you don't like about yourself, you can change. You can. It all just becomes solidified when you change your self-identity. Okay, how a plastic surgeon became interested in self-image psychology. This is the next part of the chapter. I feel like I'm doing this fairly badly. I'm going to take notes for the next one I do, so it's not just all jumbled, so it's not just all over the place. I think that's going to be a good idea. But essentially, in this section, Dr. Maxwell Maltz, what he talks about is the idea that when he was doing these surgeries on the patients, the biggest change was not the physical changes. He would do a minor alteration. These people's lives would be completely changed. And essentially, it's the fact that these people viewed themselves differently instead of viewing themselves how they thought they were. And all it took was that little switch, that little bit of change to just immediately impact their lives in a significant way. So, the next part of the chapter is called Scars That Bring Pride Instead of Shame. And this is super fascinating because, you know, I don't know how many people have seen the Clint Eastwood movie, The Outlaw Josie Wales. It's a really, really good movie, extremely compelling. A lot of those old spaghetti westerns are amazing and, you know, really hold up better than most movies of the past 20 years hold up. It's hilarious to see. But basically, he has this giant scar down his face, and it looks so cool. It makes him so much more intimidating, and it really adds to the character of who Josie Wales was, what he had to suffer through, and it's a mark that establishes, like, this guy is somebody. This guy is somebody who's experienced hardship and pain, and you know, you don't want to mess with him because he's gone through stuff you can't even imagine. And it really just depends on the way that you view scars. It really just depends on the way that you view things. And obviously, if you have a scar, maybe it's not appealing, but it's all about the facade. It's all about the way we do it. And think, like, if you have a battle wound, a scar from, you know, a sword fight, like, if you tell that story, that's immediately cool. You immediately get my respect from you. feel like it's a bad thing to say that I respect somebody for having a scar, but like, you know what I mean? There's a certain baseline level of intrigue, of mystery. I don't know why I can't speak right now. Okay. So the next part of the chapter, the mystery of imaginary ugliness. And this is interesting because they did a study where they had people that went into a room and immediately talked bad about themselves. And these were not necessarily beautiful people, but fairly average people, not ugly people. And 90% of them found something about themselves that they didn't like. And imagine if you're walking into this world and you don't even like yourself. How are you going to like others? How are others going to like you if you can't even like yourself? And I think we need to start asking ourselves these general questions. Like, if I'm so ugly and I'm pretty average, what is average? Like at a certain point, you have to have a level of self-respect. At a certain point, you have to stop breaking yourself down and start telling yourself something good about yourself. And now I think this is the last part. The self-image, the real secret. Discovery of the self-image explains all the apparent discrepancies we have been discussing. It is the common denominator, the determining factor in all of our case histories, the failures as well as the successes. The secret to this is to really live, that is to find life reasonably satisfying, you must have an adequate and realistic self-image that you can live with. You must find yourself acceptable to you. You must have a wholesome self-esteem. You must have a self that you can trust and believe in. You must have a self that you are not ashamed to be, and one that you can feel free to express creatively rather than hide or cover up. I think that's a really powerful statement, and I only read half the paragraph. Let me just look real quick if there's anything worth getting into the rest of this. It doesn't look like that, so I'm going to end with this idea. But essentially, what he's saying is that your life is really hinging upon your self-image, the way you view yourself, the way you view yourself in relation to scenarios. And, you know, how could you ever be happy if you don't like yourself? How could you ever be happy if you look at the person in the mirror and don't like them? How could you ever be happy if you're afraid to be who you really are? And that's what these questions really break down. And that's what these questions really get you to start thinking, because I really love the Einstein quote. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And that's essentially what we're doing. You know what I mean? Like, I hate to use these like played out terms like the rat race or something like that, but essentially all of us are trying to find success in a system that is the average, in a system that everyone else is trying. And it's like, why are we doing what everyone else is doing and expecting a different result? And what I want you to understand is, you know what? People have told you your whole life that you're not this. You've told yourself your whole life that you're not this. Why don't you start doing something differently? Why don't you start changing these things? Why don't you start telling yourself different ideas about yourself? Why don't you start accepting yourself? Why don't you start looking at yourself in the mirror and saying, you know what, I made mistakes in the past, but I was an idiot 5 years ago, and I'm an idiot now compared to where I'm going to be in 5 years. So why do I take the things I do so seriously? Why do I get so down on myself? Why am I so hard on myself when I mess up? Because every time you mess up, it's just a step closer to success. It's one more time that you know what, I got to be a little bit better next time. And it's like when we start to reframe these ideas, it alters our self-image and it alters the way that we respond in real time to these new stimulus, to these new scenarios. And I think this idea is so essential to becoming who you want to be and becoming a happy person, because it's not even about, oh, I need to get riches. Oh, I need to get this. Oh, I need to get that. I need to get this job. I need to do this. Like, cool. Those things are great. Those goals are great. But it's, are you happy in the process of this? Are you who you want to be? In this moment, can you look me in the eye and say, I like myself? Because that's what this is about. This is so much more important than anything else. Everything else stems from that idea. Everything else will be worthwhile once you can say that. If you don't have peace of mind and you have money, it's terrible, because it'll eat away at you. Because you're like, you know what, I have worldly possessions, I have this, I have that, but I still feel something missing. Think about Robin Williams. Robin Williams was on the top of the world and just, decided to end. Like why does someone that is that well liked, that has that much, why do they just end it? It's because it wasn't enough. It's because they weren't them. It's because there was a part of themselves missing. And this is the question we need to start asking ourselves, and these are the ideas that we need to start playing with. So what I want you to do today is, if you can't accept yourself, this is not in the book, by the way, if you can't accept yourself, just start viewing things differently. Start viewing things with a little bit of forgiveness. One of the greatest exercises you can do is think about your worst enemy. I don't know who it is. Maybe it's a teacher, maybe it's your parents, maybe it's a friend that betrayed you, but think about your worst enemy. And once you think about them, start getting enraged by what they did to you. This sounds so funny, but it's such a useful exercise. And once you have this emotion, once you have this energy, what I want you to start doing is thinking about, you know what? How would I respond in their shoes? How would I respond if I have lived every experience they live? What would I do? What would I be like? Would I be able to be better? And you may be arrogant and say yes, but the truth is, if you were exactly this person, you would make the exact same decision. And what you just exercised was forgiveness. And what I want you to do is let go of this. Let go of this anger. Let go of this rage. It's not their fault. You would be the same person. Okay? Now that we've forgiven that person, now look at your most embarrassing moments. Think about it in the exact same way, and you have forgiven yourself. When you forgive others, you can forgive yourself. And when you forgive yourself, you can improve your self-image. You can improve how you move in every single scenario. And remember, whatever you do in the past doesn't matter. It really doesn't. It only matters if you don't grow, if you don't learn, if you don't, forgive yourself and allow yourself to move into the next moment and be better, be more righteous, be more, beneficial to the world around you. With that said, I love you guys so much. I promise I'm going to take notes next time so that my thoughts aren't so jumbled, so that I'm not reading random quotes. I think it'll be a lot easier for me to go off the fly if I have a general structure. But yeah, with that said, love you guys so much. Thank you guys so much. I promise you the next one I do is going to be better. I feel like this was hit or miss. There's parts of it I liked, but there's parts of it I didn't like, so stay tuned. As well, I'll probably do some sort of writing related to this. So if you want to get that when it drops, go ahead, join my school community. If not, you want to just watch the videos, that's cool as well. Love all you guys. Thank you guys for the support. Peace out. Today we're going to go over Cybernetics, the second chapter. Yeah, the chapter isn't necessarily something that is super important. There's parts of it that I think are super fascinating, but overall it's set up like the first chapter, like the preface. I promise you soon we're going to get into the really interesting stuff when it comes to this book, but yeah, hopefully I can steer you to the most important parts. Certainly the end of this chapter is the most important, because these are the exercises that you're told to do, the exercises that you're told to meditate on and think about, and they're very transformative, so stick around to the end to get that information. But here we go, the second chapter, discovering the success mechanism within you. So essentially what this is talking about is there's a difference between human beings and animals, and the difference is that animals, their sole existence is to live, whereas human beings kind of already have that satisfied. Like, we don't really need to fight for survival. Like, even in some of the worst parts of the world, it's not like we're fighting for survival like it is in the wild. We're at least a little bit better off. And now we're kind of focused on success. We're focused on expanding our power, as Nietzsche would say, the will to power, kind of exacting your will upon everything else around you, kind of, being able to control the world as you see fit. And essentially what the rest of the chapter talks about is the idea that everyone kind of has this hardwired idea about themselves, and these ideas about themselves is really what allows them to think, really what allows them to handle their problems. And essentially what it says is there's the active mind and then there's the passive mind. I know this is very overgeneralizing the chapter, but I really just want to get to the end of it. So here we go. The active mind is the things that you know. So like, you know how to tie your shoe. Like if you tried to ask me how to tie my shoe, I couldn't explain it. I just know how to do it. There's certain things like that that's just definite. And then there's the creative mind, the passive mind, the mind that's like, you know what, I'm given this unique circumstance. I kind of think it's this way, and then you get the right answer. It's trusting your intuition. It's trusting your higher faculties, your creative faculties. And essentially what this book is emphasizing is it's the people that can combine both that are very successful, that are able to do things that other people are not. And how do we activate our creative mind? How do we activate our passive mind? And it's simply just believing that you can before you can do it. I know the book doesn't really concretely say this, but essentially this is what it's trying to say. Like, I don't know if you ever do anything creative, but whenever I do something creative, whenever I start to write something, I already have an end goal in mind. I already feel like I've already done it, because if you go into something believing that you can't do it, then you closed your mind off to it. And especially when you're working with your creative faculties, especially when you're working with the expressive faculties, you really need to believe that you're worthy of it, because otherwise it's not going to be possible. There's a part in this book, specifically in this chapter, that says somebody that believes they can do it is already 50% of the way to doing it. And I need you to understand it's the same way with creativity. It's the same way with tasks that you don't quite have the answer for right now, but you trust your intuition. You trust that if you put in the work, if you put in the time, it will unfold. And essentially, that's really what this chapter is talking about. And it's talking about the idea that we all have this machine. And this machine dictates how we deal with every single scenario. And this machine is programmed based off of everything we accept about ourselves, everything that we've been told. And because we have this machine, it responds to the stimulus that we are given in front of us. But if we change the machine, then we can change how we respond. Essentially, that's what this chapter says. And now we'll get into the most interesting part of this chapter, because I think it kind of repeats a lot of the same stuff that's been said already in this book. And I think it, kind of goes into too much detail. I guess the way I summarized it is not quite, I was trying to stall while I was flipping through the pages. But the way I was summarizing it's not quite like very concrete. And if you're in a book, obviously you want to explain in more detail. But that's basically how I took everything. So now we get into the practice exercise number 1. Get a new mental picture of yourself. The unhappy failure type personality cannot develop a new self-image by pure willpower or by arbitrary deciding to. Think about people that are like, woe is me, I can't fix this, I can't do this. No matter what, they come up with an excuse. And in some regard, we're all this way about certain subjects, about certain aspects of our lives. And the moment you recognize it, the moment you recognize that you're getting in your own way, that's really the first step. There must be some ground, some justification, some reason for deciding that the old picture of self is in error and that the new picture is appropriate. You cannot merely imagine a new self-image unless you felt that it is based upon truth. Experience has shown that when a person does change his self-image, he has the feeling that for one reason or another he sees or realizes the truth about himself. So essentially what it's saying is you're denying reality and seeing the possibility. And I think that's a big step for so many people, because before you can do it, you have to see it in your head. Everything that you see around you was first a figment of the imagination and then was carried out into reality. And when you understand this principle, then you understand how anything gets done in this world. And if you continue to visualize a negative self-image, if you continue to look at yourself in the mirror and say, I'm a loser, I'm this, I'm that, you're just confirming to your future self that that's who you're going to be. The truth in this chapter can set you free of an old, inadequate self-image. If you read it often, think intently about the implications and hammer home its truth to yourself. Science has now confirmed what philosophers, mystics, and other intuitive people have long declared. Every human being has been literally engineered for success by his creator. Every human being has access to a power greater than himself. This means you. Essentially what he's saying is creativity. Essentially what he's saying is if you listen to your creative faculties, then you can do anything that you set your mind to. Which is purely true. If you trust your intuition, if you trust your ability to respond to an issue, respond to a problem, and you carry out that plan and you don't allow anything to seep in, you don't allow anything to discourage you, and you do that for years upon years upon years, I don't care what your goal is, you're going to do it. But it's just the fact that we distract ourselves. It's the fact that we allow doubt to set in and we stop really pushing. We stop really listening to that voice in the back of our head that says we can do it. We start listening to the other voice that says, you're a loser, you're this, you're that. You start listening to the people in your life that say, well, nobody else has done it, so that means you can't do it. And the truth is, everything has to be done by someone first before anyone believes it to be possible. As Emerson has said, there are no great and no small. If you were engineered for success and happiness, then the old picture of yourself as unworthy of happiness of a person who was meant to fail must be in error. Read this chapter through at least 3 times per week for the first 21 days. Study it and digest it. Look for examples in your experience and experience your friends which illustrate the creative mechanism in action. Whenever a book tells me to do something, I don't usually do it. I think it's all up to the way you interpret these ideas. So like, what it just said, like the suggestion to recognize the fact that you can determine your future based off of the stimulus in your self-image. I think that's a very important idea that's echoed through a million other books. And if you want to do these exercises, if you want to really carry these things out, they can be beneficial, but it's also just something that's kind of natural and intuitive when you really ingrain these thoughts. So I don't necessarily say you have to. It could definitely benefit you, but it's not something I do. Memorize the following basic principles by which your success mechanism operates. You do not need to be an electronic engineer or physicist to operate your own servo mechanism any more than you have to be able to engineer an automobile in order to drive one, or become an electrical engineer in order to turn on the light in your room. You do not need to be familiar with the following, however, because having memorized them, they will throw new light on what is to follow. Number 1. Your built-in success mechanism must have a goal or target. This goal or target must be conceived of as already in existence now, either in actual or potential form. It operates by either 1, steering you to a goal already in existence, or by 2, discovering something already in existence. What he's saying is living in the end. As Neville Goddard says, when you imagine yourself to already be capable of what you want, to already have what you want, then you think and act like someone that already has that. And, think about you go into an experience and you already have experience. You've already done it before. You're that much more prepared. Essentially, that's what this is saying. It's like you act as if you have already experienced this thing, so that you're someone who has done it, and you're thinking like someone who has done it versus thinking like a complete newbie. I feel like we've all started something new that we just suck at, and then we see somebody that's done it for years upon years upon years, and we just see their level of proficiency and how much better it is. This is essentially the idea of faking it till you make it. Faking the idea that you're better than you are right now until you get to that point. This is the idea of confidence. Like you're a little bit more capable than you actually are, and that little bit more of capability pushes you to keep getting better and better and better and better and better. 2. The automatic mechanism is teleological. That is, operates or must be oriented to end results, goals. Do not be discouraged because the means whereby may not be apparent. It is the function of the automatic mechanism to supply the means whereby when you supply the goal. Think in terms of the end result, and the means whereby will often take care of themselves. Essentially what he's saying is, if you don't see a possibility of things happening, that doesn't mean they're not going to happen. You know what I mean? You can't control every circumstance in life. You can't control luck. You can't control destiny. And certain things will just happen when they happen. And it's like, if you're out here trying to dictate the circumstances, then you're out here basically trying to, reverse the polarity of Earth. Like you're doing something that's just so impossible that it's never going to be done. But if you just allow yourself to be patient, allow the things to come to you, allow the opportunities to come, and you do the right work, it's going to show up one day. But the moment that you start saying, well, it's going to happen this way, it's going to happen this way, if it doesn't happen this way, then it's not possible. That's when you start falling victim to that doubt, that seed of anxiety that grows and gets you far away from what it is that you're doing. Like I said something earlier in this video. If you believe that you can do something and you carry out the results, if you keep taking the right steps, taking the right action, eventually it's going to happen. But when you stop doing that, when you stop embodying this identity, that's when you get far away from what it is that you're trying to do. 3. Do not be afraid of making mistakes or temporary failures. All servo mechanisms achieve a goal by negative feedback or going forward, making mistakes and immediately correcting course. Learn from your mistakes. That's all this is saying. 4. Skill learning of any kind is accomplished by trial and error, mentally correcting aim after error until successful motion, movement, or performance has been achieved. After that, further learning and continuous success is accomplished by forgetting the past errors and remembering the successful response so that it can be imitated. Don't linger on your failures. Learn from them and move on and keep going forward. Don't be discouraged by them. Take everything as a learning lesson. 5. You must learn to try your creative mechanisms to do its work and not jam it by becoming too concerned or too anxious as to whether it will work or not by attempting to force it by too much conscious effort. You must let it work rather than make it work. This trust is necessary because your creative mechanisms operate below the level of consciousness and you cannot know what is going on beneath the surface. Moreover, it is nature to operate spontaneously according to the present need. Therefore, you have no guarantees in advance. It comes into operation as you act and as you place a demand upon it by your actions. You must not wait to act until you have proof. You must act as if it is there, and it will come through. Do the thing, and you will have the power, said Emerson. Okay, that's a perfect way to end it. What he's talking about at the end is creativity. It's I think creativity is something that we kind of put very low in terms of societal importance and things that are emphasized, especially in the school system. The school system is kind of invented to breed out creativity and make somebody that's just a good employee, not a great employee. And essentially what he's saying is like, there's not really a limit to creativity, and creativity doesn't really act in ways that you can even explain. Like when you listen to a song from Sinatra, is it a song or is it something more? Does it speak to your heart, or is it just a set of words, put to a beat? And essentially this is what it's talking about. Like, you have to trust something. You have to just believe that what you're doing will eventually pay off, because the moment that you don't believe in it is the moment that it becomes force, the moment that it becomes something for the sake of something. Like, think about the guy that does charity because he wants the reputation that it brings him, not the person that does charity out of the goodness of their heart. It's that idea. It's like you're doing something because you love doing it. You're writing because you love writing. You're singing because you love singing. Versus the people that do something purely for the ends, purely for the thing that they are chasing. And it's that level of authenticity that's going to bleed through with your work. It's the level of authenticity that is going to be essential to your success. Because let's face it, we live in a very inauthentic world. We live in a world purely driven by profit, not driven by anything of substance. And if you provide something of substance to this world, I don't care what it is, it's eventually going to shine through, and it's eventually going to get the level of recognition, the level of success that you want. And it's only a matter of time. With that said, that is the second chapter of Psycho-Cybernetics. I think I did a much better job of summarizing it this time, and I think I did a much better job of going through the finer details. Hopefully the rest of the book is set up in this way so that I can kind of brush through the beginning, get to the end, get to the main points, and talk about them, because I thought that was really fun to go through. But yeah, if you are liking these videos so far, stay tuned for some more of them. I may or may not link the two that I did before this. I'll try to make a playlist, but I'm going to forget, so just get on me if you want me to make a playlist where it's all in the same thing. But yeah, love you guys so much. Thank you guys so much. Peace out. I'll catch you in the next one. If you want the stuff I write, go ahead, join my school community. If you don't, then just keep watching the videos. I don't know what to tell you guys. I love you guys no matter what, no matter how much you support me. Even if you don't like me, I still love you. With that said, catch you guys in the next one. Okay. We are back to Psycho-Cybernetics. I completely forgot I said I was going to go through every chapter. Today's chapter is chapter 3. The title of the chapter is Imagination, the First Key to Your Success Mechanism. And broadly speaking, I'll summarize the chapter before we get into it. I'm going to go through the finer points. It's going to be a bit clunky. I'm going to try to explain bit by bit what this book is about. But basically, this chapter is, if you imagine yourself to be capable of something, you will immediately increase your chances of that, because your mind cannot differentiate the actual things that happen and the things that you imagine. So simply by constantly imagining something that you have done, that you haven't done yet, is going to get you that much closer. There is a million case studies in this chapter about people that, just merely imagined themselves doing something and they immediately became better at it. So without further ado, let's get into the chapter. Let's get into this very important element, and towards the end I will give you my really hack for creativity. The book offers something similar, but I like mine a whole lot better. So stay tuned for that at the end. Imagination plays a far more important role in our lives than most of us realize. I have seen this demonstrated many times in my practice. A particular memorable instance of this fact concerned a patient who was literally forced to visit my office by his family. He was a man of about 40, unmarried, who had held down a routine job during the day and kept himself in his room when the workday was over. Never going anywhere, never doing anything. He had many jobs and never seemed to be able to stay with any of them for any great length of time. His problem was that he had a rather large nose and ears that protruded a little more than is normal. He considered himself ugly and funny looking. He imagined that people he came into contact with during the day were laughing at him and talking about him behind his back because he was so odd. His imaginings grew so strong that he actually feared going out and into the business world and moving among people. He hardly felt safe even in his own home. The poor man even imagined that his family was ashamed of him because he was peculiar looking, not like other people. Actually, his facial deficiencies were not serious. His nose was of the classical Roman type, and his ears, though somewhat large, attracted no more attention than those of thousands of people with similar ears. In desperation, his family brought him to me to see if I could help him. I saw that he did not need surgery, only an understanding of the fact that his imagination had wrought such havoc with his self-image that he had lost sight of the truth. He was not really ugly. People did not consider him odd and laugh at him because of his appearance. His imagination alone was responsible for his misery. His imagination had set up an automatic negative failure mechanism within him, and it was operating full blast to his extreme misfortune. Fortunately, after several sessions with him and with the help of his family, he was able to gradually realize that the power of his own imagination was responsible for his plight, and he succeeded in building up a true self-image and achieving the confidence he needed by applying creative imagination rather than destructive imagination. Creative imagination is not something reserved for poets, the philosophers, the inventors. It enters into our every act, for our imagination sets the goal picture which our automatic mechanism works on. We act or we fail to act not because of will, as is so commonly believed, but because of imagination. The human being always acts and feels and performs in accordance with what he imagines to be true about himself and his environment. That was a very powerful start to the chapter. And I will go through a few more facts, a few more quotes from this chapter to really exemplify it. But I think the overall point of this chapter is clear that we all have a preconceived notion about ourselves, and we all believe things to be true about ourselves that isn't true. Think about it like when you go and you're fixing yourself up to go out for some occasion, and you're like, oh, well, this detail's not right. Well, this detail's not right. Or, oh, like my nose looks weird, or this. Like, we always nitpick ourselves. We always think that people are going to notice things about ourselves that only we can notice about ourselves. But it's a very toxic idea that like people care as much about us as we think they care about us, because it's ultimately only you that cares about yourself enough to notice these things. Only you that cares about yourself enough to judge yourself in these ways. Like, I need you to understand that people have a much lower like observation about you because they don't spend all day with you. They don't spend all day following you around. They don't know your inner thoughts. They don't know your inner insecurities. They don't know the amount of times you failed. They don't know your background. They don't know anything about you. They merely assume what has happened through their experience with you, what they observe about you, the body language, the cues, those sorts of things. And we oftentimes destroy ourselves through our own imagination. We oftentimes destroy ourselves because of who we believe we are, not because of who we actually are. And I really want you to start looking at yourself and start looking at yourself in situations. Do you do something because you think people are thinking something of you? Are you afraid of certain social circumstances? Are you afraid of putting yourself out there? Are you afraid of existing? These things really aren't real. Most of our fears, most of our anxieties about social issues are not real. They're simply built up in our mind, and we are petrified because we don't even know where to start with it. The first step to anything is to think about it. The first step to anything is to imagine it. I want you to imagine whatever it is that you're struggling with and come up with a plan. Let's say you have an interview. There's a section in this chapter. There is a doctor who basically recommended to his patients, if you have an interview, what I want you to do is imagine the questions that will be asked. Go through that in your mind. Rehearse that and understand and answer all the things that was asked of you. And even if none of those questions are asked, simply preparing in your mind, simply that little bit of preparation and imagining it going well, immediately improves your confidence level, immediately improves your ability to handle this situation. There is something very fundamental that I'm about to read in this chapter. I need you to understand, okay? Your nervous system cannot tell the difference between an imagined experience and a real experience. In either case, it reacts automatically to information which you give it from your forebrain. Your nervous system reacts appropriately to what you think or imagine to be true. And then it continues to say that there was a doctor who was more or less hypnotizing his patients and basically getting them to experience extreme cold, extreme heat, just simply by his ability to force these people to perceive certain things, force them to imagine certain things, trick their brain into think they were experiencing something that they were not experiencing. And this experiment seems somewhat Machiavellian, but at the same time, it really lends you to the truth of the placebo effect, the truth of the power of your brain, and what your brain chooses to believe to be true creates the truth, creates what you see, creates your reality. And so many people have such a negative side to their identity. So many people have a negative imagination about their own selves. Like, think about when you get bad news and then you immediately start imagining the worst case scenario. What you did is you just compelled that to become true. Because now every time that you think about that problem, you're thinking about the worst case. What if you just started thinking about the best case? What if you just started thinking about, okay, well, I can't really deal with this right now, but what if I just take the first step? What if I just do this? What if I do this? But instead, in every moment, you're imagining the worst case scenario. So because of that, you're never going to be able to respond in a rational, functional way. And we have petrified ourselves to the point where we can't respond to stimulus, where we can't respond to things, where we're constantly overwhelmed. And of course, you're not making the right decisions. Of course, you're not doing the right thing. It's because you've stressed yourself out to the point where you can't even make a good decision. Don't blame anyone but yourself. Just blame the way you're approaching it, because what I need you to understand is you can change the way you view things. You can change the way you imagine things. That is what this book is telling you, and that is what the rest of this book is going to explore. But this is a key fundamental thing that we need to get ingrained into your head. What you imagine to be true becomes true. There's nothing in this world that was not first imagined. Look around at anything you can observe. Anything you can observe in your entire room, in your entire life, was once first the idea of a person and then brought into reality. And when we understand that things proceed in that order, then we understand that whatever you want to do is separated purely by you imagining it, purely you believing it to be capable, purely you believing it to be true already, and then you going out and making those decisions. Because the advantage of this idea is that you don't even have to have the experience. You are creating the experience. In your mind, you are already somebody that can do it. In your mind, you are already somebody that has done it. So now when you approach that problem, you know what to do. You can approach it with a little bit more confidence. You can approach it with a little bit calmer of a brain. You've now thought it through. You've now explored it. It's now a possibility in your mind. So simply through that, it is capable of being true. Why not imagine yourself successful? Realizing that your actions, feelings, and behaviors are the result of our own images and beliefs gives us the lever that psychology has always needed for changing personality. It opens a new psychological door to gaining skill, success, and happiness. Mental pictures offer us an opportunity to practice new traits and attitudes which otherwise we could not do. This is possible because, again, your nervous system cannot tell the difference between an actual experience and one that is vividly imagined. If we picture ourselves performing in a certain manner, it is nearly the same as the actual performance. Mental practice helps to make perfect. In a controlled experiment, psychologist R.A. Vandal proved that mental practice in throwing darts at a target, wherein the person sits for a period each day in front of the target and imagines throwing a dart at it, improves aim as much as actually throwing darts. Again, this book is going to continually go into different examples. I feel like we all know somebody who said they were going to do something before they did it. They imagined themselves, they put themselves through the scenario, and they eventually did it. I'm not going to go into an extraordinary amount of detail into all these case studies. This is why you pick up the book. This is why you go through the book. This is not a book I can read solely from, like The Power of Awareness that I've done previously, but we will get to some more important ideas. A concert pianist practices in his head. Arthur Schnabel, I hope I said that right, Schnabel, the world-famous concert pianist, took lessons only for 7 years. He hated practice and seldom does practice for any length of time at the actual piano keyboard. When questioned about his small amount of practice, as compared with other concert pianists, he said, "I practice in my head." C.G. Kopp of Holland, a recognized authority on teaching piano, recommends that all pianists practice in their head. A new composition, he says, should first be gone over in the mind, should be memorized and played in the mind before ever touching fingers to keyboard. So again, there's more and more case studies as I'm going through this. The real secret of mental picturing. Successful men and women have, since the beginning of time, used mental pictures and rehearsal practices to achieve success. Napoleon, for example, practiced soldiering in his imagination for many years before he ever went onto the actual battlefield. Henry J. Kaiser has said that each of his business accomplishments was realized in his imagination before it appeared in actuality. Okay, so all this stuff is, again, the same. I really just need you to understand that he reiterates it so many times simply because it's so important. What you believe about yourself will eventually be true. Your current circumstances are a lagging result of your past states of consciousness. I need you to really understand this idea because it's so important. I'm just going to skip to the end of the chapter because I feel like everything's repeating itself. This is the practice exercise. Hold a picture of yourself long and steadily enough in your mind's eye, and you will be drawn toward it, said Dr. Harry Emerson Fosdick. Such a funny name. Picture yourself vividly as defeated, and that alone will make victory impossible. Picture yourself vividly as winning, and that alone will contribute immeasurably to success. Great living starts with a picture held in your imagination of what you would like to do or be. Your present self-image was built upon your own imagination, pictures of yourself in the past which grew out of interpretations and evaluations which you placed upon experience. Now you are to use the same method to build an adequate self-image you previously used to build an inadequate one. Set aside a period of 30 minutes each day where you can be alone and undisturbed, relax, and make yourself as comfortable as possible. Now close your eyes and exercise your imagination. Many people find they get better results if they imagine themselves sitting before a large motion picture screen and imagine that they are seeing a motion picture of themselves. The important thing is to make these pictures as vivid and as detailed as possible. You want your mental pictures to approximate the actual experience as much as possible. The way to do this is pay attention to small details, sights, sounds, objects in your imagined environment. One of my patients was using this exercise to overcome his fear of the dentist. She was unsuccessful until she began to notice small details in her imagined picture. The smell of the antiseptic in the office, the feel of the leather of the chair, the sight of the dentist's well-manicured nails. Details of the imagined environment are all important in this exercise because for all practical purposes, you are creating a practice experience. Okay, so what he's saying here is very profound, and what he's saying here is something that I somewhat do. And now we can get into my secret of this. It's not really my secret, it's Neville Goddard's secret, but I want you to either do one of the following. Do what I just read to you, which is sit for 30 minutes and imagine yourself to be this or that, or in some way change the way you view things in some way. Live out an experience that you've always wanted to experience. Live out your dreams. Create an image as if it was already true, and then just fill in the gaps, fill in the facts, fill in the little circumstances that will, in some way give truth to that image. But what we are doing here is creating a new memory. And through this memory, we are creating a new sense of self. We're creating a new identity. We are associating ourselves with this new idea. And once that self-image changes to be that, you will change as well. Okay? That's the importance of this. My secret is, what I do is, to improve my imagination, you can either do it through brute force, or you can do it through going through your day backwards as you're falling asleep. This is something that Neville Goddard taught all of his students to do. I think this is his most practical thing that he ever taught. You don't have to go into the law of assumption stuff. You don't have to go into anything else. Simply, if you improve your imagination, you will improve your life. So as you're falling asleep, go through your day in reverse order. Start with you getting into bed, you preparing to get to bed, you hopefully brushing your teeth, all the way back to you waking up in the morning. And if you do this day after day, you will get a better picture in your head. You will start to remember more and more and more in details. The thing will get more and more precise. And as you're falling asleep, fall asleep with the image of the person you want to be. Fall asleep with the experience of you having already done that which you wish to do. And that is really the secret. Feeling is the secret. Imagination is the key to your success. And as we continue to go through this book more and more, I will continue to give some things that I've done personally that have really benefited me, that have really changed me, that have really changed my experience and changed the person I am. Because the best part about this book is it's not about the external results. It's about the internal. It's about how you view yourself. It's about how you feel. It's about how you move into this world and how you experience every single day. I feel like a lot of books with these sorts of ideas are solely focused on making money or solely focused on changing your financial outcome, but this book focuses on you. It It focuses on the things that you're struggling with and how to overcome them through the power of your mind. And that's what makes this book so tremendous. So we will get into chapter 4 very soon. With that said, I love you guys so much. Thank you guys so much. Peace out. I'll catch you in the next one. Okay, on to chapter 4 of Cybernetics. The chapter we have today is dehypnotize yourself from false beliefs. And this is perhaps the most important chapter, because if you simply listen to this stuff, if you simply do this stuff, everything else in your life will be perfect. The more you dwell on negativity, the more you believe yourself to be not capable of this, not capable of that, the more you're limiting yourself in your day-to-day. If you follow this, if you listen to this, everything else will be well worth it, because your life will be something that you can face. You know, however good you are right now, if you can face something, and you can face something with a positive outlook, then you can respond with a better sense of direction, with a better sense of rationality. This is perhaps the biggest thing that has changed for me in this book, is that I don't necessarily see failure or setbacks or things that I can't do as something that's insurmountable. I just see it as something that I need to work towards. So that's the quick, short definition of the chapter. If you want to click off now, go ahead, click off now, but we're going to get really deep into this topic. My friend Dr. Alfred Adler. Adler is one of the top 3 psychologists of all time. There's Freud, there's Jung, and then there's Adler. I have not read Adler myself, but I am excited to pick him up very soon. My friend Dr. Alfred Adler had an experience when a young boy which illustrates just how powerful belief can be upon behavior and ability. He got off to a bad start in arithmetic, and his teacher became convinced that he was dumb in mathematics. The teacher then advised the parents of this fact and told them not to expect too much of him. They were too convinced. Adler passively accepted the evaluation they had placed upon him, and his grades in arithmetic proved that they had been correct. One day, however, he had a sudden flash of insight and thought he saw how to work a problem the teacher had put on the board, and which none of the other pupils could work. He announced as much to the teacher. She and the whole class laughed, whereupon he became indignant, strode to the blackboard, and worked the problem, much to their amazement. In doing so, he realized that he could understand arithmetic. He felt a new confidence in his ability and went to become a good math student. Okay, that story is very important. It's very significant. It's obviously a really simple example. It's obviously a really easy example, but it's things like this that really hamper us for the rest of our lives. Because think about it this way. Let's say the student didn't have that experience. Let's say the student didn't understand that he was good at math. Well, for the rest of his time while he's in school, he's saying, I'm not good at math. I can't do this. I can't do that. You know, it's time to apply to college. And maybe he thinks, you know what? I can't go to college because I'm not good at math. I can't do this because I'm not good at this. I can't do this because I'm not good at this. And let's say he's not even going to college, but for the rest of his life he thinks he's dumb because he didn't understand numbers. And all it was a belief he believed about himself because he had one bad experience. And that's what makes this chapter so significant, because it's the things that we believe about ourselves that we allow to solidify that will limit us for the rest of our lives. Dr. Adler's experience was very much like that of a patient of mine some years back, a businessman who wanted to excel in public speaking because he had a vital message to impart about his outstanding success in a difficult field. He had a good voice and an important topic, but he was unable to get up in front of strangers and put his message over. What held him back was his belief that he could not make a good talk and that he would fail to impress his audience. Simply because he did not have an imposing appearance, he did not look like a successful executive. This belief had burrowed so deeply into him that it threw up a roadblock every time he stood up before a group of people and began to talk. He mistakenly concluded that if he could have an operation to improve his appearance, he would then gain the confidence he needed. An operation might have done the trick and it might not. My experience with other patients had shown that physical change did not always guarantee personality change. The solution in this man's case was found when he became convinced that his negative belief was preventing him from delivering the vital information he had. He succeeded in replacing the negative belief with a positive belief that he had a message of extreme importance and that he alone could deliver no matter what he looked like in due time. He was one of the most sought-after speakers in the business world. The only change was in his belief and in his self-image. And theoretically, I'm just guessing, I don't know exactly what Dr. Maxwell Maltz told him, but more or less he probably just said, look, you got to imagine yourself doing it already. You got to imagine yourself having gone out there and given the speech, because that little bit of mental practice is more significant than any physical practice you could do. And let's say you go in your mind, you give your speech, you have already had somewhat of an experience of doing it, so when you actually do it, it's that that much less scary. And that's probably what he suggested him to do, and that kind of dovetails into the last chapter, chapter 3, so check out that video as well if you were interested in what I just said. Now the point I want to make is this. Adler had been hypnotized by a false belief about himself. Not figuratively, but literally and actually hypnotized. Remember that we have said in the last chapter the power of hypnosis is the power of belief. Let me repeat here Dr. Barber's explanation of the power of hypnosis. We found that hypnotic subjects are able to do surprising things only when convinced the hypnotist's words are true statements. When the hypnotist has guided the subject to the point where he is convinced the hypnotist's words are true, the subject then behaves differently because he thinks and believes differently. So what he's saying here is that we all hypnotize ourselves with the beliefs we have about ourselves. Like, you believe yourself to be not successful. You believe yourself to not be able to do this or that. And, if you keep telling yourself for the rest of your life that idea, then it will hypnotize you. Then it will solidify. Then it will become a part of your personality. But if you want to change the way that you view yourself, if you want to change your actual, personality, then change the way you speak about yourself. Change the ideas you hold about yourself. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to believe something positive. Just don't believe something negative. I think that's really the key with all of these ideas. It's that people believe negative things and they're like, it's impossible for me to believe something positive. Okay, you don't have to believe something positive. Just don't allow yourself to be limited. If you're bad at something, say, I'm not good at this right now. I can't do this right now. I struggle with this, so that means I have to put in a little extra work. Like, that's not a bad thing. And I want you to start changing the way you define yourself. Change the way that you speak about yourself. Change the limitations you place on yourself. Like, I'm not somebody that's good at clerical work. I'm not somebody that's good at organizing things and keeping track of all of them and doing like the grunt work and the nonsensical work and the work that you don't have to think about. So what do I have to do? Well, I tell myself I don't like this kind of stuff, but it's the necessary steps I need to do in order to organize everything else that I'm trying to do. So it's really just the way we talk about ourselves. It's really just the way that we do things. It's really just the way that we carry ourselves and the way that we internalize these things. The book goes on to continue about salesmen and their limiting beliefs, how false belief aged a man 20 years. These are all interesting case studies. I don't really want to get into them because I think we already went over 2 case studies, so we're going to get into the more meat and potatoes of this book. But obviously, if you want to get into this book and get into these examples more in depth, go ahead and pick it up for yourself. I don't want to read a whole chapter. I can't really do that with this book. I did it with Power Awareness, but this one's a little longer. Is everyone hypnotized? It's no exaggeration to say that every human being is hypnotized to some extent, either by ideas he has uncritically accepted from others or ideas he has repeated to himself or convinced himself are true. These negative ideas have exactly the same effect upon our behavior as the negative ideas implanted into the mind of a hypnotized subject by a professional hypnotist. Repetition of a message constitutes social programming, okay? I need you to understand that the more you hear an idea, the more willing you will be to accept it. And that's something that we've just slowly been programmed with our entire lives. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. Like, people say programmed is a bad thing. It's like, imagine if you told yourself you're strong, worthy, capable, and confident your entire life. I promise you your life would be better than it is right now. But because you've instilled these more negative beliefs, because you've allowed more negative beliefs to fester and grow and have roots in your head, it's held you back. And that's really all this chapter is about. It's about shifting your more negative beliefs to at least neutral or positive beliefs. The hypnotist tells a football player that he has his hand stuck to a table and then he cannot lift it. It is not a question of the football player not trying, he simply cannot. He strains and struggles on the muscle of his arm and shoulders stand out like cords, but his hand remains fully rooted to the table. He tells a championship weightlifter he cannot lift a pencil from the desk, and although normally he can hoist a 400-pound weight overhead, he now actually cannot lift the pencil. Strangely enough, in the instances above, hypnosis does not weaken the athletes. They are potentially as strong as ever, but without realizing it consciously, they are working against themselves. And more or less what he says is that you are doing this with your day-to-day. You are telling yourself things that are holding you back. You are telling yourself things that in some way is limiting you, in some way is keeping you from being everything that you can be. And I think this is one of the most important things you'll ever hear, because it's not necessarily the things you do on a daily basis that will transform your life. It's how you view yourself. Because, you can do a good set of actions, but if you don't do a good set of actions with the right intention and the right order, you're eventually going to give up. I like to liken it to the idea of like everything derives from thought. So if you think you're good enough, if you think you're capable, then you're going to be acting like somebody that has planned it out, like somebody that has the experience, like somebody that's going to do something right. Where if you do it without the intention, if you do it without the ideas, if you do it without believing it's possible, it won't be possible. You can cure your inferiority complex. At least 95% of people have their lives blighted by feelings of inferiority to some extent, and millions this same feeling of inferiority in a serious handicap to success and happiness. In one sense of the word, every person on the face of the earth is inferior to some other person or persons. I know that I cannot lift as much weight as Paul Anderson, throw a 16-pound shot put as far as Perry O'Brien, or dance as well as Arthur Murray. I know this, but it does not induce feelings of inferiority within me and blight my life, simply because I do not compare myself unfavorably with them and feel that I am not good merely because I cannot do certain things as skillfully or as well as them. I also know that in certain areas, every person I meet, from the newsboy on the corner to the president of the bank, is superior to me in certain respects. But neither can any of these people repair a scarred face or do any number of things I do as well as I. And I am sure they do not feel inferior because of it. So really what he's saying here is so important, because we compare ourselves to other people that aren't us. And you can always judge someone based off of who they are, but it's the wrong perspective to judge them from, because, are you this person? Do you have every experience this person has? Do you have every benefit this person has? Do you have every genetic gift this person has? And if the case is no, then you can't compare yourself, because that's an entire different category. That's something that you will never measure up to, because it's not possible. And it's the acceptance of this idea. It's the acceptance of, do you enjoy what you do? Do you have fun doing it? Are you happy with the person you are? Like we need to stop comparing ourselves to others and start comparing ourselves to what it is that we want to do. Because Earl Nightingale said it best: the successful person is the person who's a doctor because he wanted to be a doctor, or a teacher because he wanted to be a teacher. Like, we all have our own unique gifts, and we all are put here to exemplify those unique gifts. But the minute we start comparing is the minute we start denying our capability to achieve more. You're judging someone based off other people's metrics. Judge yourself based off your own metrics. Are you living up to the person that you know you can be? Inferiority and superiority are reverse sides of the same coin. The cure lies in realizing that the coin itself is spurious. The truth about you is, you are not inferior, you are not superior, you are simply you. You as a personality are not in competition with any other personality simply because there is not another person on the face of the earth like you or in your particular class. You are an individual. You are unique. You are not like any other person and can never become like any other person. You are not supposed to be like any other person, and no other person is supposed to be like you. God did not create a standard person and in some way label that person by saying this is it. He made every human being an individual, unique, just as he made every snowflake individual and unique. God created short people and tall people, large people and small people, skinny people and fat people, black, yellow, red, and white people. He had never indicated any preference for any one size, shape, or color. Abraham Lincoln once said, God must have loved the common people, for he made so many. He was wrong. There is no common man, there no standardized common pattern. He would have been nearer the truth had he said, God must have loved uncommon people, for he made so many of them. An inferiority complex and its accompanying deterioration in performance can be made to order in the psychological laboratory. All you need to do is set up a norm or average, then convince your subject he does not measure up. So what he's saying here is very important, because you can literally define these ideas that we compare ourselves by. So think of the things you compare yourself to others with. Maybe it's your job, maybe it's your social status, maybe it's the things you have, the money you make, the house you have, the groups you belong to. We oftentimes like to group ourselves by these arbitrary values, and however we stack up through these arbitrary values is how we value ourselves. But really what Dr. Maxwell Maltz is saying is that drop all of this stuff. Stop comparing yourself to others. Stop comparing yourself to anyone saying, I'm better than this person, I'm better than this person, I'm worse than this person. Because, even if you're saying you're better than someone, you're inherently going to find someone that exceeds your current level of capabilities. And you're going to be like, well, I'm worse than this person. Like, I could say I have more money than somebody that, is on the streets, but why don't I compare myself to Elon Musk? And I'm literally a speck of sand in the entire ocean of comparison to that guy's wealth. So it's like, we can always compare, but it's never going to get us anywhere good. It's never going to bring us any happiness. Comparison is the thief of joy, as Teddy Roosevelt said. How to use relaxation to dehypnotize yourself. Physical relaxation plays a key role in the dehypnotization process. Our currently held beliefs, whether good or bad or true or false, were formed without effort, with no sense of strain, and without the exercise of willpower. Our habits, whether good or bad, are formed in the same way. It follows that we must employ the same process in forming new beliefs or new habits, that is, in a relaxed condition. So he's going to go through different examples and different ideas of meditation. All I want you to think about is when you force something, it's resisted. So, my favorite way to change my beliefs about something is to go into a meditation and really break down why I believe something and really understand where it comes from. Why do I feel so inferior about this? Why do I worry about this so much? Why is this? Why is this? And I always like to reframe it in this state because it allows me to break the chain of anxiety. It allows me to break that negative thought loop because, it's really easy to get over negative thoughts when it's just something like really stupid. It's like, oh, I don't have $1 billion. Like, who does? You know what I mean? But it's another thing when you are looking for things in your life and finding negativity. So the easiest ways I find to break these negative thought loops is to go into a meditative state and kind of just laugh at how silly the ideas were. He's about to explain some practice exercises. Really, the last one is the only one I would do. The other ones kind of seem silly and don't seem as productive. But basically, this chapter is a tremendous one because it talks about negative beliefs, how to overcome negative beliefs. And, the true fact is most of our negative beliefs come from living in the past or living in the future. That's really what it is. Like, if you are in the now, then you have the capability to change. But if you are in the past or the future, you don't have the capability to do anything. And what I mean by this is, if you're dwelling on something that has happened, as Heraclitus said, you can never step in the same river twice. You can never recreate the exact circumstances to change that thing, so you have to accept it. And it's the same thing with the future. You're looking at the future as a projection of the past. The future is merely an assumption that everything that has happened till now will continue into the future, and all my mistakes will project onto that. And the truth is, you can change in this moment. You can adapt who you are. You can fundamentally transform the person you are, the actions that you take, the things that you do on a daily basis. So to bring the future into the present is to deny your capability to change. Neville Goddard said it tremendously when he said, every man's destiny is set in stone until he changes his self-belief, until he changes his I am. And this is really what this chapter is talking about. So on to the practice exercises, and then I'll give some of my advice on them, whether they're good, whether they're bad. But yeah, practice exercise. To be practiced for at least 30 minutes daily. Sit yourself comfortably in an easy chair or lie down on your back. Consciously let go of the various muscle groups as much as possible without making too much of an effort of it. Just consciously pay attention to the various parts of your body. Let go a little. You will find that you can always voluntarily relax to a certain degree. You can stop frowning and let your forehead relax. You can ease up a little your tension in your jaws. You can let your hands, your arms, your shoulders, legs become a little more relaxed than they are. Spend about 5 minutes on this and stop paying attention to anything stop paying any attention to your muscles. This is as far as you are going to try to be conscious from here. To try to go by conscious control. From here on, you will relax more and more by using your creative mechanism to automatically bring about a relaxed condition. In short, you're going to use goal pictures held in imagination and let your automatic mechanism realize those goals for you. Okay. What he's basically teaching you how to do is meditate, more or less. Just think of meditation as the state where your brain isn't thinking. And if your body's relaxed, it's a whole lot easier to relax your mind. There's some esoteric principle that if you relax your body, your mind will relax. Think of yoga. That's really what he's talking about. But Mental picture number 1. In your mind's eye, see yourself lying stretched out upon the bed. Form a picture of your legs as they would look if made of concrete. See yourself lying with 2 very heavy concrete legs. So basically what he's saying here is you're going to show yourself how limiting your beliefs can become, and you're going to show yourself how powerful your mind is. I don't really recommend doing this. I think we have enough stress, we have enough things in our life that are holding us back. So we're going to skip to mental picture number 3. Actually mental picture number 4, because the other ones, they don't really, I don't really think they do anything positive. And again, you can go back, reread them for yourself, but I'm trying to talk about the most positive aspects. Mental picture number 4. Many people find this the most relaxing of all. Just go back in the memory to some relaxing and pleasant scene from your past. There was always some time in everyone's life that he felt relaxed, at ease, and at peace with the world. Pick out your own relaxing picture from your past and call upon detailed memory images. Yours may be a peaceful scene at a mountain lake where you went fishing. If so, pay particular attention to the little incidental things in the environment. Remember the quiet ripples on the water. What sounds were present? Did you hear the quiet rustling of leaves? Maybe you remember sitting perfectly relaxed and somewhat drowsy before an open fireplace long ago. Did the logs crackle and spark? What other sights and sounds were present? Maybe you choose to remember relaxing in the sun on a beach. How did the sand feel against your body? Could you feel the warm, relaxing sun? Daily practice will bring these mental pictures and memories clearer and clearer. The effect of learning will also be cumulative. Practice will strengthen the tie between mental images and physical sensation. You'll become more and more proficient in relaxation, and this in itself will be remembered in future practice sessions. Okay, so the ending I'm going to tie together with the rest of the chapter because it doesn't seem to have a very concrete correlation, but really what he's saying to do is the better you can relax is the better you can respond in times of crisis, in times of negativity. And it's always when you can take a step back and observe that you can see how negative you're being, that you can see how fickle or stupid you're being. And it's only in these moments where we can kind of laugh at ourselves and kind of have fun with it, because negativity is really buying into the seriousness of the world. I really and wholly believe that's the truth. Think about the times where you're stressed out about money. Think about the times where you're stressed out about a job. It's always when you're dealing with the world of Caesar, as Neville would say, dealing with the things that we believe are important. But, the more importance you assign to them is the more stress they will carry. And I don't know about you, but I can't deal with circumstances if I'm stressed out. I can't deal with problems as well as I would otherwise be able to if I was just present in the moment there, not worrying about things, because then I can give the best answer. Then I can give the best response. Then whatever it is that I'm trying to tackle, whatever it is that I'm trying to do, I can use rationality. I can use calmness. I can use perspective. I can take a step back and look at the whole scenario and make the best decision based off of that. So that's what he's talking about in terms of relaxation. More or less, he taught you to meditate. He taught you a meditative practice, and he taught you a visual. Oh my God, I've been talking for 23 minutes, so I can't say visualization. That's bad. Hopefully nobody made it this far so that nobody can make fun of me, but I'm going to see a comment, I know it. But basically what he's saying is that if you can imagine yourself to be happy, if you can imagine yourself to be relaxed, then you can be relaxed. And the more you can practice this idea, the more you can do this in your day-to-day life. The more you meditate, the easier it is to meditate. Like, there are entire periods throughout my day where I am more or less meditating, but I wouldn't call it that just because my mind is so relaxed, just because I'm in that meditative-like state. So this was a very important chapter, and really what I want to leave you guys with is you don't have to break negative beliefs and replace them with good ones. Just ignore them, okay? Replacing negative beliefs with positive beliefs is something that is a lot more difficult. If you can't seem to find a positive spin on it, just disregard it. Just get over it and understand that it's a process to build yourself up, and understand that eventually one day the things that you face will just feel like specks of dust in the grand scheme of things. Like, think of all the things that happened to you in high school, or all the things that happened to you in middle school. Like, do you even remember the problems? Do you even remember the drama that you thought was the end of the world? And that's what these problems will be if you get over them. Once you face your problem, then it shrinks. Then it disappears. With that said, I love you guys so much. Thank you guys so much. Peace out. I'll catch you in the next one. Stay tuned for chapter 5. Hopefully it's not as long. I'm losing my voice right now, but peace out. Today, we talk about chapter 5 of Cybernetics. The chapter is titled How to utilize the power of rational thinking. Many of my patients are plainly disappointed when I prescribe something as simple as using their God-given power of reason as a method of changing negative beliefs and behavior. To some, it seems incredibly naive and unscientific. Yet it does have one advantage: it works, and we shall see later it is based upon sound scientific findings. More or less what he's saying is the ability to view things, the ability to adapt how you change. Emerson has a great essay called Comparison, or no, it's called Compensation, where he goes, there's not a bad characteristic that's not also a good one. There's not a good characteristic that's not a bad one. Think about Julius Caesar or Alexander the Great. Ambition is often seen as a good thing, but ambition is what led to their downfall. Think about people like Napoleon. Napoleon was short in stature, but he was forced to make up for that through, drive and resilience, and it drove him to become a man that almost conquered the world. And you could argue if that's a good thing or not, but it certainly drove him to worldly success, and that's saying something. There's a widely accepted fallacy that rational, logical, conscious thinking has no power over unconscious processes or mechanisms, and that to change negative beliefs, feelings, or behavior, it is necessary to dig down and dredge up material from the unconscious. Actually, that's not true. Your automatic mechanism, or what the Freudians call the unconscious, is absolutely impersonal. It operates as a machine and has no will of its own. It always tries to react appropriately to your current beliefs and interpretations concerning the environment. It always seeks to give you appropriate feelings and to accomplish the goals which you consciously determine upon. It works only upon the data which you feed it in the form of ideas, beliefs, and interpretations. It is conscious thinking which controls the knob, which is the control knob of your unconscious machine. It was by conscious thought that perhaps irrational and unrealistic that the unconscious machine developed its negative and inappropriate reaction patterns, and it is by conscious rational thought that the automatic reaction patterns can be changed. The late Dr. John A. Schindler of the famous Monroe Clinic, Monroe, Wisconsin, won nationwide fame for his outstanding success in helping unhappy, neurotic people regain the joy of living and return to productive, happy lives. His percentage of cures far exceeded that of psychoanalysis. One of the keys to his method of treatment was what he called conscious thought control. Regardless of the omissions and commissions of the past, he said, a person has to start in the present to acquire some maturity so that the future may be better than the past. The present and the future depend on learning new habits and new ways of looking at old problems. There simply isn't any future in digging continually into the past. The underlying emotional problem has the same common denominator in every patient. This common denominator is the patient has forgotten how, or probably never learned how, to control his present thinking to produce enjoyment. Okay, so I might spend a significant amount of time on what was just said because I think this is one of the most important things you'll ever learn. The past is the past. You cannot change it. Nothing you can do can alter the past. The only thing you can do is change who you are now to change your future. Because even the future we believe, even the things we dwell on, the things that we have to get done, every fear that exists about the future exists based off of past circumstances. So if you really want to change the way you view things, if you really want to change your life, you have to change your perception. You have to change who you believe yourself to be. You have to change how you act. You have to change how you move into each moment. And that all starts with thought. Everything is derived from thought, and we have to change our limiting beliefs and the things that we accept about ourselves so that we can move forward as a better person, so that we can move forward as a happy person. And simply put, most of the things we worry about all day long do not matter. Seneca said it best, we suffer more in our own minds than we do in reality, meaning that everything in our heads is built up because we're lingering on past emotions. We're lingering on things that we can't control. Who cares if someone broke your heart? That was 2 years ago. The more you think about it, the more it's going to prevent you from finding someone that treats you better. The more you linger on something that went wrong, the more you can just sit there and curl up in a ball and be sad. The only way to move forward is to forget. The only true way to get revenge on somebody is to forgive them. Because if you forgive them, then you no longer give them power over you. But if you spend your entire life hating on someone who did you wrong, you give them exactly what you want. You give them control over the only thing you have control over, which is your brain, which is your ideas, which is your thoughts. Let sleeping dogs lie. The fact that they are buried in the unconscious memories of past failures, unpleasant and painful experiences does not mean that these must be dug out, exposed, or examined in order to effect personality changes. As we have pointed out earlier, all skill learning is accomplished by trial and error, by making a trial, missing the mark, consciously remembering the degree of the error, and making a correction on the next trial, until finally a hit or successful attempt is accomplished. The successful reaction pattern is then remembered or recalled and imitated on future trials. This is true for man learning to pitch horseshoes, throw darts, sing, drive a car, play golf, get along socially with other human beings, or any other skill. Okay, so I'm going to gloss over this next part because I think this is an idea that I can summarize pretty quickly. What he's saying is that failures don't matter if you learn from them. But if we perceive them as a failure, if we perceive them as an opportunity, if we perceive them as something to give up from versus an opportunity, then we didn't learn anything. But if you just see a misstep as an opportunity to grow, as an opportunity to learn, and you're always reframing it in that way, and you're always learning from each time you go out there and fail, then it's not a failure because you're slowly progressing to your end goal. And when we start reframing things like that, then nothing is impossible. But it's just getting out of your own head. It's just getting out of your own way. You're your own worst enemy. You're your own biggest obstacle. And the more you find yourself centered, the more you remove yourself from the scenario and look at the bird's eye view, look at how meaningful it's going to be in the end when you win because you failed so many times, when you can constantly pull yourself out of the situation and think about it in the bigger picture, that's where the real victories come from. That's where the real success comes from. It's through our failures where we become successes. Without failure, you will never accomplish anything in this world. Ignore past failures and forge ahead. Here again, hypnosis furnishes convincing proof. When a shy, timid wallflower is told in hypnosis and believes or thinks that he is bold, self-confident orator, his reaction patterns are changed instantly. He currently acts as he currently believes. His attention is given over completely to the positive desired goal, and no thought or consideration whatsoever is given to past failures. Dorothy Brand tells in her charming book, Wake Up and Live, how this one idea enabled her to become more productive and successful as a writer and to draw upon talents and abilities she never knew she had. She had been both curious and amazed after witnessing a demonstration in hypnosis. Then she happened to read one sentence written by psychologist F.M.H. Myers, which she said changed her whole life. The sentence by Myers explained that talents and abilities displayed by hypnotic subjects were due to a purgation of memory of past failures while in the hypnotic state. If this were possible in her hypnosis, Ms. Brand asked herself, if ordinary people carried around within themselves talents, abilities, powers, which were held in and not used merely because of memories of past failures, why couldn't a person in the wakeful state use the same powers by ignoring past failures and acting as if it was impossible to fail? She determined to try it. She would act on the assumption that the powers and abilities were there, and if she could use them, if only she would go ahead and act as if, instead of in a tentative, half-hearted way. Within a year, her production as a writer had increased many times. She had her sales. A rather surprising result was that she discovered a talent for public speaking, became much in demand as a lecturer, and enjoyed, whereas previously she had not only shown no talent for lecturing, but disliked it intensively. Okay, so what he said here was extremely fascinating because if you just operate off the idea that you can do it, you're more likely to do it. It's simple placebo effect. It's just simple the power of the mind. Like, if you go into something believing that you can't do it, then you're going to find every excuse to not do it. Have you ever gone into a job interview and you immediately disqualify yourself? You know, you're like, well, I don't have the experience, I don't have this, I don't have that. And you're in the interview and it goes terribly. Yeah, of course it is, because you already defeated yourself before you even gave it a try. But what if you went into that room and you operated off the idea, maybe I don't have the experience, but I have something that nobody else has. And you're talking to the person and you give a unique interview and they like whatever it is that you have. You know, simply just making that shift like that, and imagine we extrapolate this onto the rest of your life. If you went into the world unbounded by past failures, unbounded by fear, how well could you operate? I don't know about you, but I do not do well under pressure. I do not do well if I'm scared. I do not do well if I'm anxious or fearful. But if I can make the right decision in the right moment, I am confident I can do something that will put me in the forward direction. Whereas if I'm scared, if I'm fearful, if I'm thinking about things and I'm just not, acting in the moment, I make terrible decisions. I fold under pressure, and it's only when I can remove myself from the situation. It's only when I can come back to that bird's eye view and that perspective and forget about the things that I'm worrying about for the sake of worrying, where I can make this successful decision. Bertrand Russell's method. In his book, The Conquest of Happiness, Bertrand Russell says, "I was not born happy as a child. My favorite hymn was, 'Weary of earth and laden with sin. In adolescence, I hated life and was continually on the verge of suicide, from which, however, I was restrained by the desire to know more mathematics. Now, on the contrary, I enjoy life. I might also almost say that with every year that passes, I enjoy it more. Very largely is due to diminishing preoccupation with myself. Like others who had a Puritan education, I had a habit of meditating on my sins, follies, and shortcomings. I seemed to myself, no doubt justly, a miserable specimen. Gradually, I learned to be indifferent to myself and my deficiencies. I came to center my attention upon external objects, the state of the world, various branches of knowledge, individuals for whom I felt affection.'" So what he's saying is, the more he thought about himself, the worse his life became, because if you dwell on yourself all day long, all you're going to figure out is the things you don't like about yourself. But pure essence, pure happiness comes from the moment, comes from not thinking. What are the best times of your life? It's always when you're sitting around the campfire with your friends, when you're, out doing an activity that you love, when you're at the Thanksgiving table with your family. Whatever it is that you're doing, you're not thinking. You're not worrying. You're not mulling over things and taking yourself away from the things that really matter. You're just in pure moment, pure happiness, pure presence. And when we can get over our own thoughts, when we can think ourselves rationally out of these negative thought loops, that's really where happiness is. Happiness is on the other side of your negative thoughts. And if you just learn to not listen to your negative thoughts, if you learn to take yourself out of that, you're going to live a really, really, really tremendous life. Ideas are changed not by will, but by other ideas. It can be seen that Bertrand Russell's technique of searching out ideas which are inconsistent with some deeply felt connection is essentially the same as the method tested clinically with such amazing success by Prescott Leckey. Leckey's method consists of getting the subject to see that some negative concept of his was inconsistent with some other deeply held belief. Leckey believed that it was inherent in the very nature of the mind itself that all ideas and concepts which make up the total content of personality must seem to be consistent with each other. If the inconsistency of a given idea is consciously recognized, it must be rejected. So let's say you're a very confident person, but you're very insecure about one thing. Is that possible? Is that something that really makes sense? And when you break it down, it's not. So stop believing it to be true. Stop allowing yourself to listen to these voices. I'm somebody that, there'd be times where I'd have to give a speech, or I'd have to give a presentation, or I'd have to go in front of people and talk. And I'm like, I do this every day for hours upon day to people I don't know, let alone I have to give a speech to people I know and people that respect me. Like, whatever response I get from the internet is going to be way worse than, the response that I get from these people. So why am I nervous? And once I did that, I clicked, and I no longer have a fear of giving presentations in front of people. I no longer have a fear of public speaking. Examine and reevaluate your beliefs. One of the reasons that the power of rational thinking goes unrecognizable is that it's so seldom used. Trace down the belief about yourself or the belief about the world or other people which is behind your negative behavior. Does something always happen to cause you to miss out just when success seems within your grasp? Perhaps you secretly feel unworthy of success, or that you do not deserve it. Are you ill at ease around other people? Perhaps you believe you're inferior to them, or that other people per se are hostile and unfriendly. Do you become anxious and fearful for no good reason in a situation that is relatively safe? Perhaps you believe that the world you live in is a hostile, unfriendly, dangerous place, or that you deserve punishment. So these are what he's talking about are self-sabotaging beliefs. And I have a friend that is one of the most talented, very witty, he's very screwed on in certain ways. He's very sharp in certain ways, but at the same time, he has a indefeatable self-sabotaging self. And I'm really trying to break him out of it right now. And I really try to tell him these things, but it's something you just have to accept for yourself. It's something you have to just look at. Like, am I my own worst enemy? What happens when I start making money? What happens when I get a big paycheck? Do I blow it instantly, or do I invest it? Do I take some money and put it aside for savings and things that I want to do, or do I instantly spend it? Like, am I my own worst enemy? And generally, it is the truth. But once you recognize a problem, then you can go fixing it. But before you recognize it, you can't address it. And there's so many little things in our life. There's so many beliefs we hold that we don't even know we hold. And once we examine them and once we break them down and see where they come from, then we can kind of just laugh them off and say, you know what, that makes no sense. Why do I do this? Why do I believe that I can't? Then ask yourself, is this belief based upon an actual fact or upon an assumption or a false conclusion? Then ask yourself the questions. Is there any rational reason for such a belief? Could it be that I am mistaken in this belief? Would I come to the same conclusion about another person in a similar situation? Why should I continue to act and feel as if it were true if there is no good reason to believe it? So these are 4 questions that can really help you here. But my favorite way to break down negative beliefs is to simply understand that I'm overanalyzing myself. I spend all day long with myself. Every moment of the day, I am actively looking at the decisions I make, looking at the things I do, and judging them. And you know what? I look at other people and I compare myself to other people based off of only what I see. And if I only see people outwardly projecting success, then I feel bad. But if you really break it down, everybody has insecurities in their own way. Everybody's life is not as perfect as you believe it. You have attributes all over people that people envy. The same way you envy somebody, they also envy you in a unique way. Like, you know, I bet you Bezos wish he had my height and my youth, and same thing with Elon. Like I promise you, the richest, most successful people in the world, I have something that they don't have. You have something that they don't have. You have something I don't have. Like, we all have things we can envy about each other, but we're thinking that we're lesser. We're thinking that we're bad. We're thinking that our unique brand of individuality, our unique brand of humanity is not just as valuable as that person's. And that's the wrong way to think about things. And when you put it that way, when you see that, you know what, people are judging themselves just as much as me, I shouldn't feel so bad. I shouldn't be in my own head as much. You know, I'm doing the best I can. Like just cut yourself some slack. That's my favorite way to do it. The power of deep desire. Rational thought to be effective in changing belief and behavior must be accompanied by deep feeling and desire. Picture yourself what you would be like, what you would like to be and have, and assume for a moment that such things might be possible. Arouse a deep desire for these things, become enthusiastic about them, dwell upon them, and keep going over them in your mind. Your present negative beliefs were formed by thoughts plus feelings. Generate enough emotion or deep feeling, and your new thoughts and ideas will cancel them out. Basically what he's saying is picture yourself as if you already have it, act as if you already have it, move as if you already have it, and just that feeling alone will be more important than actually having the physical thing. As the Bible says, pray and act as if you have received, and ye shall receive. And what it's really talking about is if you feel like you have the result, you don't need the external thing. You build yourself up to be the person that is deserving, that is worthy of these things, and that alone is enough to fulfill your happiness. What rational thought can do and cannot do. Remember that your automatic mechanism can easily function as a failure mechanism, as a success mechanism, depending upon the data you give it to process and the goals you set for it. Is basically a goal-striving mechanism. So he's saying the mind can be productive or non-productive. It could be your benefit or it could be your biggest drawback. And why not use your best tool for your benefit? What if you acted every single moment with a positive thought? What if in every moment you were inspired to do something great? How would your life go? And it would probably go pretty well, that's the answer. But it's getting to that place. It's changing these beliefs that really does this. You never know until you try. It is the job of rational conscious thought to examine and analyze incoming messages, to accept those which are true and reject those which are untrue. Many people are bowled over by the chance remark of a friend, "You do not look so well this morning." If you are rejected or snubbed by someone, they blindly swallow the fact that this means that they are an inferior person. For most of us are subjected to negative suggestions every day. If our conscious mind is working and on the job, we do not have to accept them blindly. It isn't necessarily so as a good model. So think about it this way. If somebody doesn't like you, maybe they just don't understand you well enough. Like, you can always spin things in a way that are less negative. You know, somebody rejects you, you're like, you know what? Maybe that person isn't the right person for me. I hope they find happiness, but you know, that's just a sign that, you know, I need to look internally. I need to, you know, do some soul searching, and, you know, maybe when I'm ready, maybe that person will be interested. Like there's all sorts of ways that I wouldn't even call them coping mechanisms. I just think it's reflecting the world in a more positive light. The more positively you can see the world, the more positively you'll be reflected. And the more positively it's reflected, the better your life will be. Decide what you want, not what you don't want. It is the job of the conscious rational thought to decide what you want, select the goals you wish to achieve, and concentrate upon those rather upon what you do not want. Okay, this is a very important topic, and I'll give a very easy example. Let's say you think about failure all day. Let's say you think about being homeless all day. What you're doing, in fact, is putting the wrong kind of messaging in your brain. It serves you no purpose. In fact, it's detrimental to think about things you don't want. Right now, try not to imagine a $100 bill. You just did. That's it, put very simply. The things that you think about the most are the things that are reflected into your unconscious, the things that are reflected into your day-to-day life. And if you spend all day dwelling on negativity, you're going to see more negativity. Whereas if you spend all day dwelling on the things that you want, you're going to be aspiring upward to those goals. Keep your eye on the ball. It is the job of the conscious mind to pay strict attention to the task at hand, to what you are doing and what is going on around you, so that these incoming sensory messages can keep your automatic mechanism currently advised of the environment and allow it to respond spontaneously. In baseball parlance, you must keep your eye on the ball. It is not the job of the conscious rational mind to have, however, to create or to do the job at hand. We get into trouble when we either neglect to use the conscious thinking in a way that is meant to be used, or when we attempt to use it in a way that is never meant to be used. We cannot squeeze creative thought out of the creative mechanism by making conscious effort. We cannot do the job to be done by making strained conscious efforts, and because we try and cannot, we become concerned, anxious, and frustrated. Okay, so what he's saying here, and it's very important to the idea of creativity, to the idea of living out your dreams, is become the person that is capable of greatness and don't worry about the results. Because let's say you try to force something, there's like a lid on a thing that's overflowing and you try to close it. It's just going to cause all sorts of problems. Any sort of resistance, any sort of aggressiveness, any sort of anxious, any sort of failure that comes from forced effort is going to discourage you. Whereas if you just work and if you just move and you just act as if you already have it and you embody that ideal and you're slowly making progress and you see the progress and you're not worried about when it comes because you feel like you already have it, that's the way to do it. You need imagination and faith in the imagination to create anything great in this world. With that said, that's chapter 5 of Cybernetics. Hopefully I did a good job of not reading everything in the chapter. Obviously this is a great book. I really urge you to pick it up. If you want to read my book that I just released, the link will be in the description. Fairly similar things. I write it in poetic, sort of aphoristic style, so it's a little bit different in the way that it's set up. It's a little shorter and it's, I would say, more condensed, but I think you guys will really enjoy it if you enjoyed this. So go ahead, check that out. Support the channel. Thank you guys so much. Love you guys so much. Peace out. I'll catch you in the next one. Okay, today we're going to get into chapter 6 of Cybernetics. Chapter 6. Relax and let your success mechanism work for you. Stress has recently become a popular word in our language, probably more so today than ever. We speak of this as the age of stress. Worry, anxiety, insomnia, stomach ulcers have become accepted as a necessary part of the world in which we live. Think of how many people live their life on a day-to-day basis where they're like, I gotta do this, I gotta do this, I gotta do this. Your life is more of a task list now than it is of a life. Yet I am convinced that it does not have to be that way. We could relieve ourselves of a vast load of care, anxiety, and worry if we could but recognize the simple truth that our Creator made ample provisions for us to live successfully in this or any other age by providing us with a built-in creative mechanism. Our trouble is that we ignore the automatic creative mechanism and try to do everything and solve all problems by conscious thought or forebrain thinking. Think of how many problems that you have that just resolve themselves. Think of how many things that you're worrying about instead of working on the first problem. You have something that's way down the line, a problem that you know you're going to run into, but you're worried about the first step and you're thinking about this other thing. You know what I mean? It's we need to calm ourselves down. You can never think your way out of a problem. You can only act your way out of a problem. You can only start doing something. Thinking about a problem is only going to make it worse. The forebrain is comparable to the operator of an electronic brain or any other type of servo mechanism. It is with the forebrain that we think, and feels our sense of identity. It is with the forebrain that we exercise imagination or set goals. We use the forebrain to gather information, to make observations, evaluate incoming sense data, form judgments. But the forebrain cannot create, it cannot do the job to be done any more than the operator of an electronic brain can do the work. It is the job of the forebrain to pose problems and identify them, but by its very nature, it was never engineered to solve problems. Don't be too careful. Yet that is precisely what modern man tries to do, solve all his problems by conscious thought. How many things have you thought about? How many things have you solved? The answer is strikingly not many. There's a huge difference in solving a problem and worrying about a problem. Seneca said something along the lines of, we suffer more in our own minds than we do in reality, meaning that we oftentimes build problems to be far worse than they really are. And really what he's saying here is, the more you stress out about things, the more you worry about things, the harder it is to actually fix them. You can't just brute force everything in your life, and the more you sit back, the more you take a bird's eye view perspective and look at the whole big picture, the more you're going to be able to just come up with a solution like that. There's a certain level of creative problem solving that we all have inherent in us, but oftentimes it's bred out of us because, in the school system, you're rewarded because of how fast you can work. You're rewarded because of how much busy work you can do. You're not rewarded because of you can solve a problem more effectively and more efficiently than other people. And that's something that really a lot of people don't get, but once you get it and once you start embracing this idea, you can start to use it to your benefit. Jesus told us that man cannot add 1 cubit to his stature by taking thought. Today, Dr. Wiener tells us that man cannot even perform such a simple operation as picking up a cigarette from a table by conscious thought or will. Because modern man does depend almost entirely upon his forebrain, he becomes too careful, too anxious, and too fearful of result, and the advice of Jesus, take no thought for the morrow, or the St. Paul, to be careful in nothing, is regarded as a practical nonsense. So what he's saying here is, we oftentimes petrify ourselves by being too afraid of the result. It's in fact the result that gives us the stepping stone to the success. If you're too afraid to fail, you'll never win, because you'll never take the risk. You'll never put yourself out there. You'll never even know. And you'll perpetually be in this state of guilt. You'll perpetually be in this state of never knowing if you were good enough or if you could actually accomplish something. Yet this is precisely the advice of William James, Dean of American Psychologist, gave us years ago, if we would but have listened to him. In his little essay, The Gospel of Relaxation, he said that modern man was too tense, too concerned for results, too anxious. This was in 1899, and there was better and easier way. If we wish our trains of ideation and volition to be copious and varied and effective, we must form the habit of freeing them from the inhibitive influence of reflection upon them, of egotistic preoccupation about their results. So what he's saying here is very important, and I'm not going to read the rest of this part because I think I can do a better job of summing it up. But basically, what he's saying here is we get too concerned with the results. We get too concerned with the things that we think are important. The result is not the important part, it's what we learn. It's how we build ourselves up. It's, you have to fail a certain amount of times before you can succeed. You have to have a certain level of experience before you can become proficient with something. But because we're so afraid, because we're so petrified by the idea of doing something, we don't allow ourselves to make the mistake. We don't allow ourselves to get better. And because of that, we really never get even to the plate. We never even get to the place where we can, even have the chance of succeeding. Victory by surrender. Later in his famous Gifford lectures, James cited example after example of persons who have tried unsuccessfully for years to rid themselves of anxieties, worries, inferiorities, guilt feelings by making conscious efforts, only to find that success finally came when they gave up the struggle consciously and stopped trying to solve their problems by conscious thought. Again, what I'm about to say here might be the most important part of the video, so really, 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 really listen to it. You can't think your way out of a problem. If you're struggling with something, you can't tell yourself, I have to stop thinking about it. You can't be, I'm in this negative thought loop. I'm constantly self-sabotaging. I'm doing this. I'm so bad at this. I'm so bad. Like, you can't think your way out of that. The only way to get out of that is to stop thinking. The only way to get out of that is to relax. It seems so counterintuitive because you're like, well, if I just overpower my idea with a better idea, if I just tell myself to stop thinking about this, if I just, try to get over this fear, you lingering on the fear, you thinking about not being afraid, you thinking about even the idea of these things, it allows it to hold root in your mind. Because right now, try not to imagine a $100 bill. You just did. Not thinking about something is thinking about something. And that's really the key here. It's that the more you think about your anxiety, the more it holds root in your mind. The less you think about it, the less you even worry about it, it's much more difficult for it to rear its head. And that's really what we need to start understanding, is that the more time you can find for relaxation, the more relaxation you can find, the more clear and open your mind will be. In essence, you only have so much energy throughout the day, and you're using it all throughout the day on things that don't matter. You're worried about the news, you're worried about this, you're worried about this, you're worried about this. There's only a handful of problems that you actually need to worry about during the day, that you actually need to work on. And if you free your mind up to work with 100% capacity towards those things, think of how much more efficient and productive you would be. The secret of creative thinking and creative doing. Proof of the fact that which we have been saying is true can be seen in the experience of writers, inventors, and other creative workers. Invariably, they tell us that creative ideas are not consciously thought out of the forebrain thinking, but come automatically, spontaneously, and somewhat like a bolt out of the blue when the conscious mind has let go of the problem and it is engaged in thinking of something else. These creative ideas do not come willy-nilly without some preliminary conscious thought about the problem. All the evidence points to the conclusion that in order to receive an inspiration or a hunch, the person must first of all be intensely interested in solving a particular problem or securing a particular answer. He must think about it consciously, gather all the information he can on the subject, consider all the possible course of action, and above all, he must have a burning desire to solve the problem. But after he has defined the problem, sees in his imagination the desired end result, secured all the information and the facts that he can, then additional struggling, fretting, and worrying over it did not help, but seems to hinder the solution. Okay. So what he's saying here is very important. Have your imagination, visualize the imagination, and have faith in the result. That's really all he's saying. That's really all he's telling you to do. And I'm not going to read the rest of the chapter because I think this is something that my experience can benefit more. Obviously, go read the rest of the chapter if you're interested in this, but that's not what I'm here to do. Think about when you work on a project. Think about when you're working on something and you just can't seem to find that solution. Then you leave, you go on a walk, you go do some laundry, whatever it is that you do. You leave that project, you leave working on it, and then you look at it again and the answer is just right there. Meanwhile, you were working on it for hours upon hours upon hours. You couldn't find the simple solution. You knew it was there and it just didn't click. And then you come back for 2 seconds and there it's boom. That's your creative response. That's your mind working at full capacity, and that's what you can do when you allow your mind to be creative, when you allow your mind to relax. And to relax, what you need to do is have a conscious idea that you're capable of doing something and have faith in that idea. Doesn't matter what steps it takes to get you there. You will figure it out. I don't care how unrealistic the goal is. You have to believe that you can do it. Have faith in have faith in that idea, and then carry that forward into working on that project. That is all you need for creativity. Imagination plus faith in that creative image, and you have it. 5 rules for freeing your creative machinery. Do your worrying before you place your bet, not after the wheels start turning. So before you start working on something, that's when you can worry, but the moment you start working on something, stop worrying. You never work good from a place of anxiety. You only can freeze up and lock up, and it's very rare where you'll ever make the right decision when you're stressed out. Form the habit of consciously responding to the present moment. What this means is most of our time we spend throughout the day, we're existing in everything but the present. We're existing in the past, we're worrying about past circumstances, we're worrying about past failures, we're believing that we can't do this because of this, this, and this, whatever. Same thing as the future. You're worrying about the future, you're worrying about the deadlines you have to get, you're worrying about all these things. The only thing you can affect right now is now. And the more you stay in the now, the more you focus on the now, the more you're present in the now, the more you're attentive in the now, the more you can adjust the future, the more you can change the situation, the more you can deal with things. That's all he's saying here. Try to do only one thing at a time. Your mind can only focus on so much. Your mind can only pick up so much information, so much energy to expand throughout the day. And the more we dilute ourselves by putting ourselves in here, 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 you always have to take the first step before you can take the second step. Always take the first step. Always take one step at a time and be reliant that once you get something done, then you can go to the next one. Don't worry about the second thing. Don't worry about the third thing. Don't worry about the 100th thing that you have to do. Only worry about the first thing. Sleep on it. So again, this is what I was saying. Leave the project, leave the idea, allow your mind to relax, allow your mind to get over it. And oftentimes when you return with that refreshed brain, with that relaxed brain, with that brain that hasn't been looking at the same problem for hours upon hours upon hours, it just knows the answer. You could also take it in the Neville Goddard sense that sleep with the idea that you are that which you already wish to be, and when you wake up, you'll feel like you can do it. Relax while you work. Okay, so this is going to be the end of the chapter, so I will end it with this, and I will kind of summarize things that he was talking about, but and really what I want you to take away from this chapter. But relax when you work is the idea that you lose yourself in your work. You know, a great worker is a person that doesn't think about anything aside from their work. You know, we all have those activities that we lose ourselves in. Think of the Taoist idea of Wu Wei, that there's effortless action that doesn't feel like you're working. Think of an activity that you can do all day long that you actually feel recharged after, even if it's physically demanding, even if it's mentally demanding. After you get through strenuous effort, you feel recharged. That is effortless action. That is what he's saying. And if you are in a relaxed state, then you are a creative state. You are in a state where your intuition is working, when you can find the solution that otherwise wouldn't be there, where you're not trying to force things to be correct, where you're not trying to, force things to work in a certain way, where things just work because you're allowing them to. And that's really what he's saying. When you're working from this frame of mind, you're working from a creative frame of mind, and the creative solution is always the best solution. It's not the right solution to force something. Whenever you ever force someone to do something for you and they enjoy doing it, it's when you allow things to just happen that it really, really, really fits, that everything goes according to plan, and that your life is so much better. All resistance creates all resistance that you have in your life is going to create issues, regardless of what it is. I don't care if it's physics, I don't care if it's metaphysics, I don't care if it's psychology. Whatever sort of resistance that you're giving is going to in some way affect you down the line. And once you start understanding this and start understanding that, you need to be more open to things not working out. You need to be more open to things not going according to plan. You need to understand that the result is not the most important part. It's the steps that you take to get there. It's having faith that you can solve the problem, and then it's working tirelessly to solve it. It's not being discouraged by one setback. It's not being discouraged by one failure. It's understanding that in each failure is the seed of victory. That is all you need to know. That is all you need to take away from this chapter, is that divorce yourself from the ideas. Divorce yourself from the stress. Divorce yourself from all these negative thoughts. Find a way to calm yourself down. I don't know if it's meditation for you. I don't know if it's mindfulness for you. You can do visualization. There's all sorts of exercises that you can do, but the very easiest one to do is simply, if you're working on a problem, you can't find the solution, get up, go for a walk, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 2 hours, however long it is, to calm yourself down, get yourself away from the world, come back to that problem, and it'll already be solved. I love you guys so much. Thank you guys so much. I will continue to go through these chapters. This was a fun one to go through. Love you guys. Peace out.